Have you ever stopped for a moment and asked yourself, where has beauty gone? We live in an age of unimaginable technology. You can summon a car with a tap on your phone. Groceries arrive at your doorstep. Money moves across continents in seconds. We have convenience, speed, security, even a degree of prosperity. But here's the haunting question: where is the beauty? Think about the spaces we inhabit. Once, cities were crowned with cathedrals and temples buildings that reached upward, reminding us of something higher, something beyond ourselves. Today, most of us wake up surrounded by concrete blocks and glass towers that look identical whether you're in New York, New Delhi, or Tokyo. Uniform, repetitive, soulless. The English philosopher Roger Scruton warned us years ago: beauty is vanishing from the modern world, and in its place, we are raising a culture of ugliness. And it's not just architecture. Walk into many art galleries today, and you'll see installations designed to shock, confuse, or disgust, rather than uplift. Turn on the radio, and much of popular music feels mechanical, mass-produced, stripped of passion. Compare this to a Mozart symphony, a piece of Rumi's poetry, or the brushstrokes of Van Gogh. The difference is staggering. And yet, there is still one sanctuary where beauty survives untouched: nature. The curve of a mountain ridge, the delicate petals of a flower, the vast mystery of a night sky. These remain timeless, but even this refuge is under assault. Forests are cleared, oceans polluted, landscapes scarred. Humanity, it seems, is not just indifferent to beauty, we're actively destroying it. But here's the truth. Beauty is not some luxury, something extra to sprinkle on top of life, if we have the time or money. Beauty is a necessity. Without it, we grow spiritually starved, emotionally numb, and morally lost. Dostoevsky once wrote, through his character Prince Mishkin in The Idiot, that beauty will save the world. That wasn't a romantic exaggeration. It was a statement of profound truth. Beauty, truth, and goodness. Throughout history, philosophers and theologians have spoken of three ultimate values: truth, goodness, and beauty. These aren't things we pursue because they lead to something else. They are valuable for their own sake. Why believe something? Because it's true. Why choose a certain action? Because it's good. Why gaze at a painting or listen to a melody? Because it's beautiful. We don't need further justification. Roger Scruton explained it perfectly. Beauty belongs to the same category as truth and goodness. It justifies itself. It needs no defense. But unlike truth and goodness, beauty has a special power: it moves us. You can know a fact and feel nothing. You can perform a duty and feel nothing. But you cannot truly encounter beauty without feeling something stir deep within you. Think of the last time a piece of music gave you chills, or a story brought tears to your eyes. That emotional reaction wasn't a weakness. It was the mark of being fully alive. Beauty awakens our passions. It ignites something noble within us. And in doing so, it pulls us upward. The moral demands of beauty. Here's something people rarely admit. Beauty demands something from us. Stand in front of Michelangelo's David, or hear a haunting raga played on a sitar, or stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, and you'll notice something strange. You don't just admire it passively. You feel called to become worthy of it. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke captured this perfectly in his poem, The Archaic Torso of Apollo. As he gazed upon an ancient sculpture, he suddenly felt as though the sculpture was gazing back at him, exposing his flaws, demanding he change. The poem ends with a command as sharp as lightning: you must change your life. That's the hidden truth about beauty. It doesn't just please us, it judges us. It holds up a mirror and says, look, you can be more. You must be more. And this is why many people today turn away from beauty. Because beauty asks too much. It sets a standard. It calls us to higher ground. And if you're not willing to climb, it feels easier to mock, to desecrate, to drown in ugliness. Roger Scruton once described this tendency with a brilliant image. He said that beauty perches on our shoulder like an owl of wisdom, while we try to hide our petty vices like rodents in our clothes. And so, to escape the judgment beauty casts upon us, we try to bite the owl away. This is why children laugh at crude jokes or delight in disgusting things they're rebelling against a standard. And sadly, many adults never grow out of this rebellion. Instead of ascending toward beauty, they settle into ugliness, shock, and distortion. Why we crave surprise but settle for shock. Now let's go even deeper. What is it about beauty that captivates us so deeply? One answer is the rare union of order and surprise. Beauty isn't just order. If it were, a row of factory buildings would be beautiful. But it's also not just chaos, otherwise a junkyard would move us. Beauty is the delicate dance between pattern and surprise. Think of a sonnet. It follows a structure. Yet within that structure, the poet introduces fresh, unexpected turns. Think of nature, fractals and leaves, spirals and seashells, galaxies whirling. There is order, but there's also wonder, mystery, surprise. Here's the problem. Humans are designed for surprise. But when we cut ourselves off from beauty, we still crave that element of shock. And so, many turn to the grotesque, the perverse, the violent. Horror movies, tabloid scandals, outrage culture, fetishism, reality shows built not on meaning but on conflict. All of these provide a cheap hit of surprise without the order, without the wonder. But the cost? Desensitization? Soon, what shocked us yesterday feels normal today. And so we seek ever greater extremes. It's the aesthetic equivalent of an addiction spiral. The playwright Robert Bolt once warned that modern theater was sliding into this abyss. Instead of stirring audiences with beauty, playwrights sought only to shock. He predicted it would end with actors screaming obscenities on stage. Sadly, his prediction came true. And the same thing is happening across culture: shock replacing beauty, disorder replacing harmony. And yet, even in this cultural wasteland, our hunger for beauty never fully dies. Because beauty is not optional. It's not decoration. It's oxygen for the soul. The vanishing of beauty in our world. So far, we've seen how beauty feeds the soul, stirs our noblest passions, and even makes moral demands on us. But let's take a closer look at where beauty has disappeared most visibly in our modern world. Architecture, from cathedrals to concrete boxes. Imagine walking through a medieval town. Narrow, winding streets open into a plaza crowned by a cathedral. Spires stretch toward the heavens. Stained glass windows paint light onto stone floors. And every arch, every carving whispers, life has meaning. Now contrast that with the average modern city block. What do you see? Glass towers, box-like apartments, lifeless concrete. Functional, yes. But inspiring? Hardly. Roger Scruton once called this the cult of utility. Buildings today are designed to serve a practical purpose: offices to work in, apartments to sleep in, malls to shop in. But beauty? That's dismissed as unnecessary, even wasteful. The result is skylines that numb rather than uplift. Streets that feel anonymous, neighborhoods that deaden the spirit. The pioneer of this utilitarian vision, the architect Le Corbusier, once declared that ancient cities filled with spires and cathedrals should be shattered and replaced by skyscrapers. And that's exactly what happened. But here's the irony. While those towers were built to symbolize progress, most people feel alienated by them. They lack soul. They lack surprise. They lack beauty. Think about this. People still travel across the world to marvel at Notre Dame, the Taj Mahal, the pyramids, or the Alhambra. These structures weren't built for utility alone. They were built to inspire awe. Can you imagine tourists flocking in 1,000 years to take selfies in front of a shopping mall or a big box store? Architecture shapes how we feel about the world we inhabit. When beauty vanishes from our shared spaces, it isn't just cities that suffer, it's us. Art, from masterpieces to shock value. The same decline is visible in art. The paintings of the Renaissance, the sculptures of ancient Greece, the masterpieces of Asia, these weren't just pretty objects. They reflected an aspiration toward the divine, the ideal, the eternal. But today, much of contemporary art isn't about beauty. It's about shock, provocation, or ideology. A urinal displayed as art. A blank canvas sold for millions. Performances designed to confuse or disgust rather than inspire. Why? Because beauty demands craftsmanship, discipline, and devotion. Shock, on the other hand, is easy. And shock sells, at least for a moment. But while beauty nourishes, shock corrodes. The playwright Robert Bolt warned that when art abandons beauty, it spirals into obscenity and chaos. And he was right. Many art galleries today look more like laboratories of provocation than temples of inspiration. But here's the twist. People still crave beauty. Why else do we cover our walls with posters of Van Gogh or watch films with breathtaking cinematography? Why else do we travel just to stand in front of a statue or painting centuries old? Beauty is still the gold standard. We've just lost the courage to pursue it. Music, from soul-stirring to formulaic. Music, too, has suffered. Think of a Mozart concerto, a bhajan sung in devotion, a haunting folk melody passed down for generations. These works stir something timeless. They awaken joy, sorrow, longing emotions that remind us we're alive. Now compare that to much of what fills the charts today. Formulaic beats, manufactured lyrics, songs designed more for streaming algorithms than for the human soul. Of course, there is still great music being made, but the dominant trend is toward mass production, not beauty. And we feel the difference. People may dance to catchy tunes, but they turn to older works when they want to feel. Just listen to how movie soundtracks borrow from classical traditions when they want to evoke real passion. Deep down, we know beauty matters. The flight from beauty. So why has beauty been abandoned in so many areas of life? One reason is the moral demand of beauty. As we saw in part 1, beauty isn't neutral. It inspires us, but it also judges us. To stand before beauty is to be reminded of what we lack, of how small, selfish, or careless we can be. And that is uncomfortable. Scruton argued that this discomfort leads many to turn away from beauty. Instead of facing the higher standard it sets, we settle for ugliness. We surround ourselves with what is easy, what is shocking, or what is merely practical. It's like rejecting a mentor because their example makes us feel inadequate. Better to pretend they're irrelevant than to face our shortcomings. In the same way, we mock beauty or ignore it so we don't have to change. Beauty as a moral force. But beauty, when we let it in, transforms us. It awakens a desire to be better, to live with dignity, to rise above mediocrity. Friedrich Nietzsche, so often misunderstood as a prophet of chaos, actually spoke of this transformative power. He said that in the presence of beauty, we feel an increased strength, a fullness of being. Beauty fills us with energy, with vitality, with longing for greatness. And this is why beauty isn't just decoration, it's moral fuel. A person who lives surrounded by beauty, whether in music, architecture, or nature, feels drawn to order, to meaning, to truth. Beauty shapes character. It calls forth the higher self. Religion, beauty, and meaning. This brings us to an interesting point. Many argue that the decline of morality in the West stems from the decline of religion. Without faith, they say, there can be no virtue. But what if the deeper cause is the disappearance of beauty that once accompanied faith? History gives us a powerful example. Over 1,000 years ago, Prince Vladimir of Kiev sent envoys to study religions. When his men visited Constantinople, they were struck not by doctrine, but by beauty. They attended the divine liturgy and later reported, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or on earth, we cannot forget that beauty." That experience was so overwhelming that Vladimir chose Christianity for his people. Not because of theology, not because of arguments, but because beauty convinced him that God was real. Think about that. Beauty, not philosophy, not morality, brought salvation to an entire nation. Which suggests something profound. Beauty itself is a pathway to truth and goodness. You don't need to believe in God to be moved by a sunset. You don't need to belong to a church to feel awe at a symphony. Beauty transcends religion, yet it carries the same power to lift the human spirit. Our crisis today, and so we return to our crisis. In a world obsessed with convenience and technology, beauty is dismissed as irrelevant. Yet without it, people grow restless, numb, and disoriented. Deprived of beauty, we seek stimulation elsewhere through shock, perversion, endless scrolling, or consumption. But these only deepen the void. If Dostoevsky was right that mankind can live without bread, but not without beauty, then our society is starving in ways we don't even recognize. Reviving beauty and why it matters. We've seen how beauty has faded from our architecture, our art, our music, even our everyday spaces. We've also seen how, without beauty, we don't just lose a pleasant extra. We lose something vital to our moral and spiritual health. Now the question is, can beauty be revived? And if so, how? Why beauty feels dangerous? Let's start with why so many people resist beauty in the first place. As Scruton pointed out, beauty makes demands on us. It doesn't just please the senses. It challenges us. It whispers, rise higher, be better, change your life. And that's uncomfortable. It's far easier to mock, to distract, to consume shock or utility than to face the quiet, noble demand of beauty. That's why so many modern spaces feel lifeless. Why so much modern art feels like a joke. Why entertainment often appeals to the lowest instincts. But deep down, no one is satisfied with ugliness. Nobody truly rests in monotony. Even those who mock beauty still decorate their homes with flowers, seek out sunsets, or listen to music that stirs them. Beauty is the one thing we can't fully banish, because it's woven into our very humanity. The role of surprise and wonder. Earlier, we talked about how beauty is the marriage of order and surprise. Lose order and you fall into chaos. Lose surprise and you fall into monotony. Beauty gives us both. It is structured yet unexpected, patterned yet filled with wonder. And here's the key. Wonder is essential to human life. Wonder is what makes us pause, breathe, and feel that life has meaning. Without wonder, life becomes mechanical, robotic, drained of joy. But when people lose access to beauty, they seek wonder through disorder instead. They choose shock, perversion, or endless stimulation. And this is why so much of modern culture feels twisted. We've traded wonder for shock. We've swapped beauty for ugliness. Why beauty civilizes. But what happens when a culture revives beauty? History shows us. Civilizations that valued beauty created cathedrals, temples, libraries, symphonies, and poetry that endured for centuries. These weren't just luxuries, they shaped character, bound communities together, and gave people a sense of transcendence. Beauty civilizes. It reminds us that life is not just survival, not just consumption, not just production. Beauty says, life has meaning beyond utility. That's why Dostoevsky declared, beauty will save the world. Because beauty makes us more human. It calls forth our higher nature. It civilizes our passions. It reminds us that truth and goodness are not abstract. They must be lived, embodied, made visible, where beauty still lives. Now, you might be thinking, all right, but in a world drowning in ugliness, where do we even find beauty anymore? The answer is simple. Start with nature. Look at a mountain range, a forest, a river, or even the quiet perfection of a flower. Nature never lost its beauty. It's still our greatest teacher of the past. The music, the paintings, the sculptures, the architecture created in earlier centuries, they still speak to us. They carry the same power today as when they were created. And don't forget the ordinary acts of beauty in daily life. A meal cooked with love, a handwritten letter, a garden planted in a small yard. Beauty doesn't always mean grandeur. Sometimes it's as simple as order and surprise brought together in small human ways. How we can revive beauty. But if we want beauty to truly return, it requires courage. The courage to demand more from our art, our buildings, our music, our lives. The courage to accept the moral demand beauty places on us to rise higher, to change our lives, to make ourselves worthy of what we behold. Think of Prince Vladimir's envoys. They weren't converted by arguments. They were converted by beauty. What if, instead of trying to persuade people with endless debates or rules, we simply filled the world with beauty again? What if children grew up surrounded not by monotony or ugliness, but by spaces, music, and art that lifted them upward? Beauty doesn't just inspire, it transforms. And if enough people demand it, create it, live by it, then slowly, culture changes. Why Dostoevsky was right. At the end of the day, Dostoevsky's bold statement beauty will save the world isn't naive. It's profound. Science can feed us. Technology can connect us. Wealth can comfort us. But beauty makes life worth living. As Dostoevsky also said, mankind can live without science. It can live without bread, but it cannot live without beauty. That may sound extreme, but look at the world today. With more wealth and technology than ever, people are still restless, depressed, lost. Why? Because they're starved of beauty. Beauty is the antidote to despair. It doesn't just distract us from meaninglessness, it reveals meaning directly. When you stand before beauty, you don't ask, what's the point of life? You feel the point in your bones, the call to us. And so we arrive at the question, what will we do? Will we continue down the path of ugliness, shock, and utility, filling our lives with things that numb but never nourish? Or will we dare to seek, create, and preserve beauty? Because beauty is not just out there in cathedrals and mountains. Beauty can live in us, in our choices, in our character, in how we treat one another. As Nietzsche put it, what do we long for when we see beauty? To be beautiful. To live beautifully is to live truthfully, kindly, nobly. To live in such a way that when others look at us, they feel the same stirring that we feel when we look at a painting, hear a melody, or watch the sunrise. That's the challenge beauty sets before us. That's why it's not optional. And that's why, in the end, beauty truly will save the world.